Have you ever noticed how certain people leave you feeling drained, confused, or even questioning your own worth? Without saying a single harsh word, it's not always what's spoken that carries weight, it's the energy behind it. Toxic people don't always arrive with obvious chaos. Sometimes they smile, they flatter, they pretend to care, but underneath, there's an undercurrent pulling you away from yourself. Now ask yourself, how many times have you tolerated that pull, kept silent, or stayed just to avoid conflict? How many times have you explained yourself to someone who was never truly listening? This isn't just about people, it's about energy, awareness, and self-respect. Because the truth is, when you learn to make one clear, conscious shift within yourself, toxic people begin to fall away like leaves in autumn. This isn't about confrontation. It's not about changing others. It's about changing how you choose to respond, where you place your energy, and what you are no longer willing to entertain. If you do this once, with clarity and intention, it can create a shift so powerful that those who feed off your reactions will never return. Ladies and gentlemen, today we explore the art of becoming untouchable, not through force, but through presence. There is a certain wisdom in learning to recognize the energy that surrounds you, not just in nature, not only in the environment, but most importantly, in the people who share your space. Every encounter leaves a trace. Some people walk into your life and bring a lightness, a breath, a sense of presence that nourishes you. Others leave you feeling drained, like your internal flame has been dimmed slightly after speaking with them. This difference is not about judging people as good or bad. It is about sensing what energy they bring and what it does to you. To become more aware of this, you must learn to feel, not just to think. Thinking often involves logic, explanations, and justification. You might tell yourself they didn't mean it, or maybe they had a hard day, and in doing so, override your natural intuition. But feeling is direct. It is immediate. When you are around someone, your body already knows. Do you feel open or closed? Do you feel seen or overlooked? Do you feel calm or anxious? Energy recognition begins with this form of inner listening. No argument is needed. No confirmation from others is required. Just as a tree does not need permission to grow toward the light, you do not need permission to move away from what dims you. But this sensitivity is only developed through stillness, observation, and self-respect. In martial arts, one learns not just how to move, but when not to move. The same applies in life. You don't always need to react. Sometimes you need only to observe. When you are with someone, observe how you breathe. Is it deep and relaxed, or shallow and tight? The body never lies. It is the first to detect a mismatch between your inner state and your outer environment. Most people are not trained to notice this. They endure conversations that make them feel uncomfortable. They remain in relationships that subtly poison their clarity. Why? Because they do not trust their own perception. They have been taught to prioritize logic over instinct, politeness over self-preservation. But once you begin to recognize energy for what it is, everything changes. Consider how water responds to temperature. When it is too cold, it hardens. When too hot, it turns to steam. The same is true for your being. In a toxic environment, you become either closed and rigid or unstable and reactive. In a healthy environment, you remain fluid and balanced. This is how you begin to measure the quality of energy people bring, not by what they say, but by how you change in their presence. And so the first step in removing toxic influence from your life is not confrontation. It is awareness. You must see clearly. Before you take any action, you must understand where the disturbance is coming from. Some people speak gently but carry envy. Others laugh with you but harbor resentment. Words can be deceptive, energy is not, but to recognize this, you must be quiet enough to sense it. If the mind is too noisy, always racing, always speaking, it cannot feel the undercurrent. You must slow down, you must notice. Your sensitivity is not a weakness, it is a compass. Now comes the discipline to act on what you recognize. Awareness without action is hesitation. If you notice that someone's presence repeatedly disrupts your peace, you must adjust your boundaries accordingly. This does not mean you need to explain yourself or convince anyone of your reasons. The river does not apologize for its direction. It simply flows toward clarity, and understand this, not everyone who disrupts your energy is doing it on purpose. Sometimes they are simply unaware. They are acting from their own wounds, their own noise, their own unresolved battles. But their lack of awareness does not have to become your burden. Just because someone does not know how to handle their energy does not mean you are responsible for absorbing it. Many people carry emotional chaos, fear, insecurity, judgment, and they are constantly looking for places to discharge it. If you are not conscious, you become that place. They complain and you listen. They project and you absorb. They manipulate and you explain. But when you recognize this pattern, you can break it. You can choose to be the space that no longer reacts, the silence that no longer entertains drama, the presence that reflects truth, not confusion. There is a shift that happens when you start seeing people energetically. You stop taking things personally. You stop being surprised by behavior. You simply notice, is this adding to my growth or is it taking from it? Is this interaction expanding me or draining me? Over time, your sense of peace becomes more important than your need to be liked. Your alignment becomes more important than pleasing others. And this is where true strength begins. Because when you value your internal state, you naturally repel what is harmful. You do not need to fight it. You do not need to fix it. You simply remain rooted in your own clarity, and that clarity becomes your filter. The more you live from this state, the less effort is required. Toxic people sense your energy before you speak. They feel that their usual tactics will not work here, that their games will not be entertained. And slowly, they disappear, not because you attacked them, but because they can find no opening within you. This is not arrogance. This is not indifference. It is self-respect. When you respect your own energy, you no longer allow just anyone access to it. You walk through life with a different rhythm, a different posture, not as someone who avoids people, but as someone who understands that their peace is a garden, and not every foot deserves to walk through it. In the art of living with awareness, one of the greatest disciplines is the practice of non-reactivity. It may appear passive, but it is not. It is, in fact, an advanced form of presence. To not react does not mean to suppress or to avoid. It means to observe without becoming entangled. When a person speaks with anger, they offer you their fire. If you react, you accept it. If you remain calm, the fire dies in your stillness. Human beings are wired to react. This instinct was once necessary for survival. A loud sound, a sudden movement, these were signs of danger. But in modern life, we are not responding to tigers or falling rocks. We are responding to words, tone, facial expressions, opinions, judgments. And in this overreactive state, we lose control over our inner environment. Every reaction becomes a door through which your peace escapes and conflict enters. Toxic people are not always loud or obvious. Sometimes they are subtle, patient, calculated. They know how to press the right emotional buttons. Their power lies not in their actions, but in how you respond. If you become angry, they gain fuel. If you defend yourself, they feel victorious. If you chase their approval, they know they can control you. But if you do not react, if you remain centered, stable, neutral, they are left with nothing to feed on. This is why non-reactivity is not weakness. It is a refusal to become someone else's puppet. Every time you take the bait of provocation, You abandon your own presence and enter their world. And their world is built on instability. The moment you enter it, you begin to lose your balance. Observe closely. When someone tries to provoke you, what are they truly doing? They are testing your foundation. If your peace is shallow, it will be disturbed. If your mind is noisy, it will be captured. If your emotions are unsettled, they will be triggered. So the question is not, why is this person provoking me? The question is, what within me is responding? When you are reactive, you are predictable. A single word can shift your mood. A single look can disturb your entire day. This is not freedom. It is imprisonment by your own impulses. The practice, then, is to become aware of the gap between stimulus and response. In that gap lies your power. Most people never notice this space. The moment they are challenged, they respond. But the more aware you become, the more that gap expands. And in that space, you can breathe. You can choose. You can decide whether this moment deserves your energy. Most often, it does not. Not every battle is worth your sword. Not every insult deserves a reply. Not every invitation to chaos must be accepted. People who operate from a toxic mindset are often emotionally chaotic. Their minds are restless, their emotions unsettled, their thoughts distorted. If you enter into conflict with them, you do not elevate them. You descend to their level. And once you descend, your clarity is lost. The mud of their confusion begins to stick to you. Their pain becomes your reaction. Their instability becomes your agitation. But when you do not react, you hold your ground. And more than that, you show them a mirror. You show them what it looks like to remain composed in the presence of aggression. You show them what it means to contain energy rather than waste it. This is how you teach without words. This is how you lead without control. The discipline of non-reactivity begins with watching yourself. The next time someone says something designed to provoke, pause. Do not rush to speak. Do not rush to explain. Just notice what is happening inside you. You may feel a tightening in the chest, a quickening of the breath, a rise of anger. This is the moment of power. If you can feel it without acting on it, you are free. Most people fear this stillness. They think that if they do not respond, they will be seen as weak. But true strength does not shout. It does not defend itself constantly. It does not need external validation. Strength is silent, like a mountain, and when the storm comes, the mountain does not move. When you become non-reactive, people begin to notice. They may try harder at first, louder words, sharper insults, more manipulation. This is their way of testing whether you are serious. But if you remain unmoved, they begin to understand that their usual methods no longer work. And in time, they stop. This is the power of non-reaction. It is not immediate. It is gradual but permanent. It teaches the world how to treat you by what you do not entertain. You do not need to argue for your peace. You only need to stop giving it away. Sometimes, the most powerful response is no response. Not out of pride, not out of fear, but out of understanding that your peace is too expensive to spend on meaningless conflict. To master this state, train yourself daily, in small moments, when someone cuts you off in traffic, when someone interrupts you, when someone disagrees with you. Notice your impulse. Pause before the reply. Smile internally. Remain still. Let the wave pass, and when it does, you'll find yourself standing even taller than before. Each time you choose non-reaction, you refine your inner clarity. You preserve your energy. You sharpen your awareness. And most importantly, you send a message, internally and externally, that your emotional state belongs to you and no one else. To walk in alignment is to walk without contradiction between thought, word, and action. Many people speak of peace, yet carry conflict in their tone. They seek clarity, yet nourish confusion with the choices they make. They wish to be respected, yet they betray their own values in moments of pressure. Alignment is not about perfection. It is about consistency. When what you think, what you say, and what you do are all in harmony, your presence begins to radiate something very rare: integrity. Integrity is not something you shout about. It is not a role you perform. It is not a set of rules memorized. It is a state of being that emerges when you stop living in fragments. In this state, you no longer need to convince others of who you are. They feel it. You no longer chase validation. Your actions confirm your truth, and most importantly, toxic people begin to disappear, not because you push them away, but because your energy no longer accommodates their disorder. When your internal system is aligned, it produces clarity. You no longer wrestle with yourself. The mind is not pulling in one direction while the heart pleads for another. In this space, you become calm, not the kind of calm that requires silence or stillness around you, but the kind that remains even when the world is loud. Toxic individuals cannot maintain proximity to such a person for long. They are drawn to contradiction because it mirrors their own. When they see someone who is confused, emotionally unstable, or reactive, they sense an opening, something they can enter, twist, manipulate. But when they approach someone in alignment, they find no doorway. There is no confusion to exploit, no inconsistency to criticize, no wound to dig into. And so they move on. You must understand, alignment is protection. The more you stray from your values, the more you expose yourself to harmful influence. Each time you act against your truth, you weaken your center, and a weakened center cannot hold when pressure comes. This is why toxic people often succeed in breaking down others. They sense the places where your life does not match your intentions. But when you begin to live aligned, everything becomes simpler. Decisions come from inner clarity, not external approval. Relationships are chosen based on energetic harmony, not desperation. Words are spoken from truth, not from impulse. And because of this, people feel the shift in you. They may not understand it, but they sense it. You no longer react as you once did. You no longer over-explain. You no longer entertain meaningless drama. And those who cannot operate without chaos begin to find you boring, inaccessible, distant. This is not rejection, it is refinement. The process of alignment begins with honesty. You must ask yourself, not who do I want others to think I am, but who am I really? What do I value when I am not trying to impress anyone? What behaviors, habits, patterns am I still tolerating that do not reflect who I wish to become? These questions are not always comfortable, but they are necessary. Without them, you will keep making temporary adjustments rather than lasting change. Once you begin to answer honestly, you can observe your life more clearly. Are your relationships rooted in truth or obligation? Is your work aligned with your purpose or driven by fear? Are your conversations reflective of your values or soaked in avoidance? These are not judgments, they are invitations. They invite you to return to center, because every moment spent outside of alignment is a moment where your energy is fragmented, and fragmented energy attracts disordered people. When you are aligned, there is no need for defense. You do not argue with people who misunderstand you, because you are not dependent on being understood. You do not prove your worth, because your actions already reflect it. You do not fear being alone, because solitude with clarity is more valuable than company with confusion. This is the turning point. Toxic people lose their grip when they no longer find emotional leverage. They rely on your inconsistency to manipulate you. If you say one thing and do another, they will highlight the gap. If you desire peace but behave in ways that invite conflict, they will use your contradiction to justify their presence. But when your thoughts are clear, your speech is deliberate, and your actions mirror both, you become solid, unshakable. Living this way requires discipline. You must monitor your inner world with the same attentiveness as a monk tending a fire. Small compromises lead to large disconnections. One lie, one forced smile, one agreement made out of fear rather than truth. Each creates a crack, and through that crack, the energy of toxicity enters unnoticed. Not as a storm, but as a whisper. Over time, the whisper grows, until one day you wake up and realize you have drifted far from your path. To return is not complicated. It is a single step to align again. Begin with one action that matches your intention. Speak one sentence today that reflects your truth. Say no where you once said yes out of fear. Stand still where you once rushed to please. These acts, though small, restore the connection to your center. And as you live from this center, your presence becomes a boundary. It says without speaking, I know who I am. I know what I allow. I know what I no longer entertain. You become selective not out of pride, but out of understanding that what you allow into your space shapes your life. You are no longer available to be shaken by toxic behavior, not because you have built a wall, but because you have built a foundation. And foundations do not tremble in the presence of wind. They endure, they carry, they hold. From this place, alignment is no longer a concept. It is how you walk, how you breathe, how you speak, how you choose. And those who cannot meet you in that space will naturally fall away, not out of malice, but because they cannot thrive in the light of clarity. There is a quiet strength in those who walk without needing to announce where they are going. A silent discipline in those who no longer feel the urge to explain their worth or prove their intentions. This is the way of one who has learned to build silent boundaries, not as walls of resistance, but as expressions of clarity. When you fully understand who you are and what you allow, you do not need to justify your decisions to others. You simply live them. In a world that constantly demands your explanation, your silence becomes power. Most people are conditioned to seek validation for every choice. They over-explain their no, soften their truth, and seek approval even when it goes against their intuition. They fear being misunderstood, so they speak more than necessary. But the more you explain yourself to people who do not seek to understand, the more you give away your energy. There comes a point where you must stop asking others to see your heart. Let your energy speak for itself. Let your presence define your standard. If someone cannot read your silence, they are not meant to hear your words. This is not about arrogance or superiority. It is about conserving energy and walking with inner dignity. You are not responsible for correcting every misunderstanding. You are responsible for living your truth with consistency. Boundaries are not something you always declare. Often, they are something you become. You become someone who no longer responds to manipulation. You become someone who no longer entertains drama. You become someone who does not get pulled into guilt or emotional games. And in this becoming, you create a field around you that speaks without sound. This is where I stand. This is what I allow. This is who I am. People who thrive in toxicity cannot survive in such clarity. They feed on reaction. They rely on argument. They seek openings in your insecurity. When you feel the need to justify your silence, they find a way to twist your words. But when you choose stillness, not as avoidance, but as expression, they feel it. Your silence unsettles them because it reflects their own noise, and in that reflection, they become uncomfortable. Silent boundaries are not about ignoring others. They are about not abandoning yourself. You begin to realize that it is not necessary to defend every line you draw. Some people will misunderstand your silence. They will label it coldness, pride, or rejection. Let them. You are not here to manage their perception. You are here to maintain your peace. Many people confuse kindness with availability. They believe that being open means being accessible at all times, but true kindness includes wisdom, and wisdom knows when to retreat. When you protect your time, your space, your mental clarity, you are not being distant. You are being intentional. There is a sacredness in not being available to everything and everyone. Consider the mountain. It does not explain why it stands where it does. It does not move for the wind. It does not answer the birds that fly past or the storms that surround it. It simply stands. This is the nature of silent boundaries. You do not move every time someone pushes. You do not bend every time someone disapproves. You simply remain rooted in your own understanding. This inner stillness is not something that appears overnight. It is cultivated. Each time you choose not to react to provocation, you strengthen it. Each time you choose not to engage in arguments that have no purpose, you refine it. Each time you walk away instead of explaining why you are walking away, you deepen it. Over time, your silence becomes a sanctuary, an inner temple that no external voice can disturb. To build this kind of boundary, you must first confront the part of you that still seeks to be liked. You must face the discomfort of being misunderstood. You must let go of the need to be seen in a certain way. That is the sacrifice. But what you gain in return is worth more than the approval of anyone. It is self-possession. It is the ability to walk through the world without leaking your energy. There will always be those who question your silence, who test your resolve, who push against the invisible walls you've built. Let them. You do not need to speak to make your boundary known. It is there in your absence. It is there in your calm refusal. It is there in the way you no longer argue, chase, or explain. You simply do not participate. That is the loudest message you can send. And when your life begins to reflect this silent strength, the nature of your relationships changes. The people who once demanded your attention begin to fall away, not because you forced them out, but because there is no longer a frequency match. They cannot connect to what no longer entertains chaos. And in their place, new energy enters. People who understand the language of stillness, who do not require explanation to recognize respect, who do not question your silence because they've learned to listen in quieter ways. Silent boundaries are not for others, they are for you. They remind you where you end and others begin. They teach you that not every call must be answered, not every conflict must be solved, not every invitation to chaos must be accepted. And they allow you to preserve the most valuable thing you possess, your inner space. The person who honors their own energy walks differently. They do not rush, they do not chase, they do not need to defend their choices at every turn. Their presence becomes the answer, their silence becomes the proof, their consistency becomes the explanation, and toxic people, those who once thrived on reaction, drama, and confusion, find nothing to feed on. They disappear, not because you told them to, but because there is nothing left in you that needs their validation. There is a quiet intelligence in knowing when to remove yourself, not as a statement of anger, not as an act of revenge, but as a decision rooted in clarity. Withdrawal is not about giving up. It is about recognizing when a space, a person, or a situation no longer reflects your direction. It is the decision to stop watering soil that refuses to nourish what you bring. In life, many people stay too long where they do not belong, not because they are unaware, but because they are afraid. Afraid of being alone, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of what will happen if they walk away. But the truth is, remaining in the wrong energy is more damaging than stepping into the unknown. Every moment spent trying to fix what is meant to fall away drains you of the strength you need to grow. Intentional withdrawal is a form of wisdom. It is the choice to leave without drama. Not every exit must be loud. Not every goodbye must be explained. When your presence no longer feels welcomed, respected, or valued, your absence becomes your message. And those who are attuned will understand it without needing words. To withdraw does not mean to disappear in resentment. It means you no longer lend your energy to places where it is misused. You no longer pour your time, your attention, or your care into spaces that fail to recognize it. This is not cruelty. It is self-respect, and it takes a quiet kind of strength to step back with grace instead of lashing out with frustration. There is a time to speak, and there is a time to be silent. There is a time to engage, and there is a time to walk away. Knowing the difference is what allows you to move through life without leaving parts of yourself behind. When you stay in a toxic situation too long, it begins to alter your rhythm. You start to shrink to fit someone else's comfort. You dim your voice to avoid their reaction. You second-guess your truth just to keep the peace. But peace that demands your silence is not peace. It is control. Toxic people often seek to keep you where they can reach you, not because they love you, but because they benefit from your energy. They do not want to grow with you. They want to keep you within their loop of patterns, where they feel familiar, where they can pull your strings. The moment you begin to withdraw, not just physically but energetically, they sense it, and their response will tell you everything. Some will become louder, more dramatic, more manipulative. Others will try to guilt you back into place. But you must remember, your growth will always be uncomfortable for those who refuse to grow. Intentional withdrawal is not running away from responsibility. It is walking away from dysfunction. It is not about blaming others. It is about protecting your alignment. When you feel that your presence is no longer helping you expand, you give yourself permission to leave. No explanation, no performance, just a quiet turning inward and a deliberate stepping back. You begin to notice that your energy is your responsibility. You start choosing where it flows, who receives it, and how it is shared. And in doing so, you begin to realize how much of your life was once spent giving to those who only took. You gave your listening to those who never heard you. You gave your love to those who feared it. You gave your peace to those who broke it just to see if you'd rebuild it again. But withdrawal is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming clear. You no longer seek to change anyone. You no longer wait for someone to become who they promised they would be. You accept what is, and from that acceptance you move, not in anger, not in haste, but with intention. This movement becomes a purification. You create space for new experiences. You make room for people who resonate with the person you are becoming, not the version of you that was shaped by compromise. The more you practice this, the more you realize how powerful silence can be. How stepping back can shift an entire dynamic without saying a single word. It is not the volume of your voice that changes things. It is the clarity of your action. You walk away not to punish, but to protect. You withdraw not to teach a lesson, but to honor your evolution. And in this act, something profound happens. Your self-worth begins to grow quietly inside you. No applause, no spotlight. Just a steady, grounded sense that you no longer chase what doesn't align. And those who are only in your life because of your accessibility, your emotional labor, your willingness to bend, they disappear, not because you pushed them out, but because they no longer find what they were looking for. They cannot reach you in the same way. They cannot pull the same strings. You have removed yourself from the stage of their performance. Intentional withdrawal is not avoidance. It is presence. It is you fully awake, seeing things as they are, and choosing to move in a way that protects your inner peace. The path ahead may be quieter, but it is clearer. And in that clarity, there is strength. Not the strength that dominates, but the strength that walks away when a place, a person, or a pattern no longer deserves the presence of your light. When you begin to recognize energy clearly, respond without reactivity, live in alignment, build silent boundaries, and practice intentional withdrawal, you no longer fight toxic people. You become invisible to them, not because you hide, but because you no longer resonate with the patterns they feed on. You rise above their reach without anger, without conflict, without needing to prove anything. Your clarity becomes your shield. Your stillness becomes your message, and your absence speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. This is not a journey of becoming someone else. It is a return to your natural state, calm, aware, grounded, and whole. In this state, the wrong people lose interest, and the right people are drawn to your peace. Good luck on your path. May your presence remain untouchable, your silence powerful, and your spirit always aligned with truth. Thank you for walking this journey with mindfulness and strength.